Hi, everybody. Delighted to be here. So, just by way of framework, 25 years ago, I wrote a white paper called The Dawn of the Age of Knowledge. And in that white paper, forecast the emergence of the knowledge economy and how the internet was going to change everything, and how education was really at the center of the knowledge economy. Because in a knowledge economy and a global marketplace, what you knew, your education, made the difference not only for an individual, but for a company, and for that matter, a country. So you fast forward the clock 25 years, education globally is a $7 trillion market, nearly 10% of global GDP. And look at the digital learning, which we believe had the opportunity to democratize education by increasing access, lowering the cost, and ultimately improving the quality. $160 billion by 2019 of that $7 trillion overall market, about 2% of the overall market. And what we had forecast before was that the digital learning market was going to become a $1 trillion industry by 2034. Obviously, the last year, with the coronavirus, we've had a game-changing event. The world has been turned upside down. And from a learning standpoint, you had 1.6 billion students that were instantly put online a year ago. Essentially, what that means is you've had 20% of the world's population thrown in the deep end of the online learning pool and told to sink or swim. Some have sank, some have crawled to the edge of the pool, got out, and said they're never going back in. Many have flailed around a little bit, kind of gotten used to it, and will never go back to the way things were done before. The genie's out of the bottle. In fact, we think it's so dramatic. We say that there was BC before Corona, which was effectively evidenced by physical and linear models. And now we're entering the world of AD after the disease, which is exponential and digital. And with that, we've seen a dramatic acceleration of the industry, where now we believe that digital learning is going to be a $1 trillion market by 2027, so about half the time that it was before. So effectively, the future has been accelerated to the present. And what we've really seen with coronavirus overall is many of the trends that were in place before coronavirus have accelerated during the pandemic. So I'm going to talk about 10 mega trends that affect not only digital learning, but the overall environment that we're in. The first is the knowledge economy. And so we've seen this speed up during COVID. In the old manufacturing economy, it was about physical capital. In the knowledge economy, it's all about human capital. In the manufacturing economy, it was top-down management. In the knowledge economy, it's about flat organizations. You have teammates as opposed to this hierarchy. And basically, it's all driven, your ability to compete and succeed is your ability to obtain, train, and retain knowledge workers. Because education has become so critical for people's future and for businesses' future and for countries' future, education, higher education has become a growth market. So in 1900, there were just 500,000 students around the world that were in college and university. By 2010, there's 160 million students in universities around the world. Today, there's 207 million, and it's expected in the next 10 years that's going to double to 414 million. And before, we thought most of that was going to happen digitally. We now expect all that and then some to be digital. Looking at what's happened in terms of public markets, in terms of valuing companies in the digital learning space, 2U, for example, is up nearly 120% in the past 11 months. Chegg, and you'll hear from Dan Rosenzweig after my talk, is up 227%, has now got nearly a $15 billion market value. Second megatrend, the digital revolution. So the digital tracks that have been laid over the last 25 years, now 4.8 billion people on the internet, 3.5 billion smartphones, allows an entrepreneur an idea to reach millions of people at breathtaking speeds. And what we've seen in the digital learning space is being able to leverage those digital tracks in highly scaled exponential models. We call this weapons of mass instruction. And these weapons of mass instruction, digital learning models, we're seeing really take off in a really major way. Now, for example, COURSERA, and I think Jeff Maginacaldo will be on the event tomorrow. They saw a 247% increase in registrants in new registrants during the coronavirus, and with 80 million students on the platform, which is remarkable. Class Dojo, another digital learning platform, saw a 5 times increase in signups, a 5 times increase in engagement, which equaled a 25 times increase in usage. The third mega trend, and what our firm GSV is named after, is global Silicon Valley. And so this is the mega trend that the mindset of innovation and entrepreneurship that's made Silicon Valley such a remarkable place is spreading throughout the world. And you've seen that in terms of companies that are being funded. Last year, 8 of the 10 largest fundings in venture capital were companies outside the United States. We have now 50% of all unicorns are outside of the United States. And you're seeing a pretty dramatic shift in terms of innovation centers that are popping up everywhere. I like to say it's now from Austin to Boston, from Chicago to Sao Paulo, from Mumbai to Shanghai to Dubai. That's this emerging global Silicon Valley. The fourth trend is smart everything. Smart cities, smart watches, smart phones, smart homes, and everything's connected. Fifth mega trend is homework. I call homework, which is basically that the office is now optional, but the Zoom room is essential. Your home has become your operating system, your operating platform for life. Number 6, winner takes all. And this is the fundamental, there's disproportionate gain to the leader in a category. The internet's all about that. And you've certainly seen that happen in the last 12 months with the leadership of companies that are the winner in the industry have separated themselves even more from their competitors. Number 7, sustainability. It's no longer a question of whether it's green or growth. You got to do both. Generation Z and millennials demand that from not only companies they work at, but companies they buy from. Number 8, data king. And this is a world of infobesity where there's so much information. It's how do you separate noise and create signals from all that. But data increasingly is where the action's at. Everything's becoming a subscription. So it's no longer just software. It's your entertainment. It's your music. And it's going to be increasingly, you're going to see in education. In fact, the 3 companies we have talking after this are all subscription-based models. Number 10, I call it contemporary capitalism. And this is this idea that you're seeing an evolution of the traditional capitalism. Look at Milton Friedman 50 years ago said the only corporate social responsibility a company has is to maximize profits. That philosophy is very outdated. And when you're looking at the great companies of today and tomorrow are going to combine the ambition of a for-profit company with the heart of a not-for-profit company. In fact, I got a book coming out in a couple of days called The Mission Corporation that really talks about this philosophy. And with that, we added a 5th P to our investment process. We've always had people, product, potential, predictability, but we've now incorporated purpose because we do believe that you can't have a great business where embedded in that business isn't a North Star or a real sense of purpose. There's 5 tech trends that I want to talk about that influence the digital learning space real quickly. First is the Zoom platform, which, like the iPhone of 2008, you're starting to see many businesses that are built on top of the Zoom platform, and you're seeing really a Zoom economy be created. And we believe there's going to be exciting businesses. We've invested in a company called Class EDU, which is built on top of the Zoom platform. But that is a huge wave that is happening as we speak. Artificial intelligence, which again has been developing in a regressive way for a number of years. It's really come into its own. You're seeing corporations spend aggressively in the digital learning space. It's going to be all about personalized learning. AR plus VR equals XR. And again, exciting implications for the digital learning space as this becomes a reality. Blockchain, we're all seeing what's happened in the digital currency space, but the distributed ledger as a way to create a currency, if you will, for knowledge, we think is going to be a very exciting area of opportunity. 5th is 5G, which is now coming in a major way, which accelerates all these tech trends that I just talked about, and with 20 to 100 times more speed with the network. And I don't think people have fully really comprehended what the implications of that will be. There's 5 demographic trends I want to speak to, and again, put it in the context of what the future of digital learning looks like. First, put a framework around this. If the world was made up of 100 people, there'd be 7 North Americans, you'd have 7 South Americans, you'd have 11 Europeans, 15 Africans, and 60 Asians. And looking at age distribution, you have 25 of those 100 would be under the age of 15, and you'd have 9 of those 100 65 years or older. So, the world overall is a young demographic. When you look at demographics in the rearview mirror, from an economic standpoint, the growth engines of the last 100 years was the United States, Japan, Europe, and Canada. And those countries in 2000 made up 14% of global population, but were 68% of global GDP. During the last 20 years, the GDP growth of these countries was 1.5%, so slow growth. And because of that and the growth other places, now it's under 50% of global GDP is represented by these countries. And looking at demographically, 26% of these countries' population is over the age of 60, so you got an old population, and 16% is younger than 15. In fact, in Japan last year, there were more diapers sold to adults than babies, just as evidence of an aging population there. So we look over into the horizon, over the dashboard. What we see emerging as the new leaders, the new economic engines for the world, we call it V-CHIPS. And that stands for Vietnam, China, India, Indonesia, Philippines, and Singapore. You look at these countries, it's 44% of global population in 2000, and in 2000, just 8% of global GDP. But there's been 7.5% GDP growth the last 20 years. And today, we've gone from 8% to 22% of overall global GDP. And from a demographic standpoint, just 12% of the population older than 60, and 24% of the population younger than 15. So looking at cities with 1 million or more population, the United States has 10 of them. The V-CHIPS have 217 cities with 1 million or more population. Asia mints 1 billionaire every 2 days. 6 children in India for every 1 child in the US. 50% of the unicorns are outside the United States, as I referenced earlier with the global Silicon Valley, and 33% of unicorns are in these V-CHIPS. Looking at global middle-class consumption, in 2015, North America and Asia Pacific were roughly equivalent. By 2030, Asia Pacific will be nearly 6 times greater than North America in terms of middle-class consumption. Looking at how people spend their money in the U.S., U.S. spends 3 times more of their income on housing than Asia, and in Asia spends 7 times more of their income in education. So just in terms of where priorities are, and by the way, one of the reasons why you see such attractive businesses being created in the Asia region, as well as companies selling into Asia. So the old center of gravity looked like this. The new economic center of gravity looks like this. And if you want to see what's on deck, here comes Africa as number 2. So Africa has 1.2 billion people. 42% of the population is under the age of 15. And looking at, in terms of growth, you got 5 of the 10 fastest growing countries in the world last year were Africa. And while venture capital is pretty low today, it's growing quickly and a lot of activities happening here. We've made an investment in an online K-12 company called Valencia Institute out of South Africa that we're quite excited about as an example of some of the innovation that's occurring there. Number 3 trend is MENA. And what MENA's really become is the hub for the world. 2/3 of the world's population is an 8-hour flight from Dubai. And you're looking at what's going on, around those 8 hours. You have India, Mumbai is a 2.5-hour flight from Mumbai. You've got Africa. You've got now the connection between Israel and the UAE. It's extraordinarily exciting. 578 million people, 30% under the age of 15, $1 billion of venture capital. So we say education is the knowledge economy, as oil is to the industrial economy. And we've made an investment in a company called Abwab. It's an online tutoring business that's doing quite well. 4th demographic trend, We call it POW, and this is the power of women. The idea in the knowledge economy, if you want to see the future, see who's getting educated. 60% of the college students are now female. And so if you fast forward what that looks like, we think in the next 10, 20 years in terms of who's going to be leading what, it's going to be an increasing number of women that are in the leadership positions. And you can see, what's happening around the world. Kamala Harris, recently, first female vice president of the United States. Janet Yellen is the first secretary of Treasury and so forth. The fifth demographic trend, we call it vid kids, which is really, after this corona boom, the kids that have been operating, in the environment of coronavirus and all the things that are happening virtually and digitally. I mean, you're seeing just remarkable type of behavior changes, and understanding what that means for the future of digital learning, we think is extremely important, and we factor in terms of how we look at things. There's 5 existential threats, with the idea that these are big issues that are facing the world. We think from an investment opportunity standpoint, and the idea that our overall focus is giving everybody an equal opportunity to participate in the future, the foundation of which is access to quality education and knowledge. I think solving these existential threats are critical for this. So the first threat is growing inequality. And Thomas Piketty in 2014 wrote the book Capital, which basically I can boil down 700 pages into one formula, which is R is greater than G. R is the rate of growth on capital versus the rate, G is the rate of growth of GDP per capita. And because the rate of return on capital is higher, by definition, inequality is growing. Number 2 threat is the cycle of poverty. This is the reality that if you're in the United States, if you're born poor, you have a 70% chance of remaining poor. So in other words, your future is determined by how well you select your parents, and that's fundamentally not only unfair, but not sustainable. Third, human capitalization rate. Malcolm Gladwell does a really eloquent job of talking about creating human capitalization rate as a core metric for how successful society is in terms of creating an opportunity for its populace. It's really the percent of the population that is reaching its potential. So in the knowledge economy, when you look at the fact that we now have, when we look at the fact that 7% of the workers in the world are knowledge workers. In other words, they have a college degree. So you got 93% of the world doesn't have a college degree, yet those 60% of the new jobs being created require a college degree. Technology automation, where basically we know that technology is eating away not only blue collar jobs, but white collar jobs and even no collar jobs. So it's estimated that the workforce, 53%, are going to need to be upskilled or reskilled in the next 5 years just to be current or to remain in the job that they have and be productive. Number 5, we look at all this and we say, what are the impediments that are in the way of a person getting the knowledge, education that they need to be productive and to participate in the future? And it's more than just, there's a number of things that are impediments. And again, we think all these are critical to focus on. Time, money, technology, engagement, access, gender. And here are 5 structural time bombs. And then I'm going to talk about some investment themes as I wrap up. First, time bomb, 500 million job loss due to COVID, so a massive unemployment. Second, structural issue is over the past 40 years, tuition for college universities have grown 3.5 times inflation, which is just not sustainable. You couple with that $1.6 trillion of student debt, which is more than U.S. credit card debt, and the fact that the majority of students today are non-traditional students. So 75% of students are not the 18 to 22-year-old full-time student that college universities are set up for. With the classes offered during the day, the dormitory, the marching band, the football team, all irrelevant to 75% of that population. And the fact that of the there's 4,000 universities that have less than $100 million in their endowments. They don't have the financial flexibility to really adjust to the realities of the marketplace. Number three is the education economics in the old world, that price was the signal to quality, and being elite meant that you were scarce. And really, I think reimagining that, where there isn't the association with price and quality, and the fact that elite really means excellence, not scarcity. Number four, structural bias. We're looking at the old world where the admissions director at Harvard effectively was the hiring director at Google. And number five, the inconsistency of teacher quality. So a statistic is if you have 3 bad teachers in a row, you're statistically dead. All these are major issues that need to be fixed. And the good news is that's what entrepreneurs do. They fix things, they solve problems. So we look at all these different issues that are out in the marketplace, and then what we're looking to do is to connect the dots. And from that, we've identified 10 investment themes that we believe are the future of digital learning. The first is lifelong learning. In the old world, you played from 0 to 5, you learned from 5 to 25 years old, you worked from 25 to 65, and then you retired after you're 65. In the new system, you're going to learn from the time you're born to the time you retire, if you ever retire. We call this pre-K to great learning. So no longer are you going to fill up your knowledge tank to age 25 and drive off through life. You're going to continually need to be learning just to stay current and relevant in the world that we're in. The analogy I like to make is it would be like if I asked you if you were physically fit, you said, oh yeah, I ran in a marathon in 2005. Well, if you haven't done anything since then, you aren't very physically fit, and the same with learning. You're going to continually need to be learning just to be relevant. Second, knowledge as a currency. This is the idea that the old world, it was the degree that created the currency for future opportunity. In the new world, the degree stays relevant, but it's augmented by other ways that people are able to represent what they know, what their capabilities are, what their skills are, other attributes for participating. And so that knowledge as a currency is a key theme that we're looking for. And Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, said the future of work is about skills, so stop worrying about degrees. And we think that's dead on. Number three, knowledge portfolio. And this is the idea of how you're representing your knowledge and the different things that you've accomplished and other ways that you're able to represent, why you are qualified to be part of a opportunity. Number four, Hollywood meets Harvard. This is the idea that it's tough to learn anything if you're not paying attention, if you're not engaged. What Hollywood does an amazing job with is telling stories, by also creating stars out of actors and having high quality and low cost through scale. We think that can be applied to education. Masterclass is an example of a company we've invested in that uses Hollywood meets Harvard. Number five, invisible learning. This is the idea of learning without even recognizing that's what you're doing. It's basically invisible, embedded in your activity. Games is a great example of this. We do believe the future of learning, a lot of that is going to be in games. So there's 2.5 billion people that play games around the world, and learning by doing something that you want to do, we think is really compelling. TikTok for learning, is another kind of example of invisible learning. Number six, XR. I already talked about this before, but basically you can be in a lab anywhere. News to knowledge as a continuum for learning. And this is thinking about ways that people are acquiring knowledge, everything from an article where you're acquiring short form knowledge, could be a blog post, a podcast, a documentary, a conference you go to, a virtual conference you go to, all the way to formal classes and degrees. Number eight, robo-ed. This is the idea that you are using artificial intelligence to create personalized learning. So with every single click, becoming more adaptive to what you know, accelerating you where you're proficient, going back where you're deficient. We're an investor in a company called Photomath, where literally you take your phone, take a picture of a math problem, instantly comes back not only with the answer, but the solution, and if you need help, get your own personal robot tutor. Number nine, higher ed. And this is the idea, HIRE, ed. Historically, higher education and business have had separate silos. We're looking at this being learning to earn in a more integrated relationship. Number 10, education is a benefit. Like healthcare 30 years ago was a key feature to attract and retain the best people. Increasing education is a benefit that corporations are looking to obtain, train, and retain the best people. Guild's an example of this with Rachel Carlson as the CEO. And I think looking at healthcare is an analogy to education. You're looking at both of these markets, and they're both critical, essential services. Yet healthcare, they both spend about $7 trillion globally on it. In healthcare, there's $6.6 trillion of market cap. In education, there's only $190 billion. But the changes that are taking place here with the capital invested, over the last 10 years, now $13 billion of venture capital coming in. You now have 32 unicorns. You're seeing a rapid catch up and acceleration in all this. And so John Chambers, the former CEO of Cisco, said in 1999, education over the internet is going to be so big, it's going to make email usage look like a rounding error. And so that was over 20 years ago. And that didn't happen at the time that John Chambers made that forecast, because a lot of things, it takes longer to kind of get to that inflection point. And the fact of the matter is, you didn't have the digital, 20 years ago, you didn't have the digital infrastructure. You only had 360 million people on the internet. You had no smartphones. You had, computing costs. Power is 51,000 times greater today. All these different pieces are different, which make all of a sudden why you're seeing the explosion of digital learning happen, because you do have this digital infrastructure created. You do have digital natives as teachers, and that's all happening in a real powerful way today. So you look at what's now transpired. We have now 32 unicorns in the digital learning space, up from 0 5 years ago. So Steve Jobs made the comment, these overnight successes take a hell of a long time. And I think as we look at the digital learning space, it's taken a long time to get to the place where we could all see how critical learning was to create the opportunity for everybody to participate in the future. But we didn't have the digital infrastructure. We didn't have the solutions available. We didn't have the digital natives teaching, but now we do. And this is all happening in a very powerful, a very effective manner. And as we look over the next 5, 10 years, we couldn't be more excited about what's taking place here. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to kick this very exciting event off. And we'll look forward to seeing you in a few minutes as I get to moderate the upcoming panel. Thank you.